My name's Nick Edison. I'm a young employee at Murphy Motors, a major car manufacturer. I have loved automobiles since I was a kid, and I joined this company by desperately acquiring knowledge. After that, I was recognized for my efforts, and thankfully, as a member of the development department, I was able to lead a full and hectic working life. Today, after a long meeting about a new product project, just as I was about to leave, the general manager called out to me.
Hey Nick, got a minute?
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Don't be so tense. It's nothing weird. You know the part we're planning to use for the new product in the project you're involved in, right? The one we talked about in the meeting.
Oh, that part, right. What about it?
Well, as we mentioned in the meeting, we're planning to outsource it, and I'm thinking of leaving the decision of choosing the contractor up to you.
Me? Really? I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. Seeing me flustered, the general manager gently smiled and patted my shoulder.
Life's all about experiences, you know.
But isn't it too soon for me to handle such an important task? I mean, outsourcing this part is going to be a deal worth about $100 million, right? Are you sure I'm the right person to proceed with this?
Don't worry. I've got a list of candidates here. Each company on this list is trusted and technically competent, and other employees will help with the actual negotiations and procedures. I want you to actually see the candidates and their products to develop your eye.
Develop my eye.
Yeah, it might feel daunting because it's a big deal, but I think it's absolutely necessary for your future. I believe in you, so go ahead with confidence. If you ever have any trouble or doubts, you can always come to me.
With the department head's encouraging smile, I left the meeting room feeling nervous. The list given to me had companies that our company had long relationships with, and as the department head said, each was trustworthy and technically competent. Choosing from this list, I was sure to make the right decision. From that day, I took a few days to schedule appointments and visit the companies listed. Today, I visited the last company on the list.
Mr. Nick Edison, we've been expecting you. Please, this way.
A polite young female employee guided me to the reception room. She seemed to be in her mid-20s. She respectfully handed me her business card.
Nice to meet you. I'm in charge here, Emily Sanders.
I looked over the business card she handed me. I had thought she was from sales, but she was actually from the technical department, which surprised me a bit.
Did you find it unusual that someone from the technical department rather than sales came to meet you?
Had it shown on my face? She hit the nail on the head. I wondered if it was rude to be surprised by her gender. But lying or making up something silly here would be odd. I decided to just nod. Yes, it's a betrayer to see women in technical positions in this industry. I apologize if that was rude.
No worries. I get that a lot, and it doesn't bother me. Nick, could we go over the details of this project now?
Sure, please take a look at this document. I handed Emily the document, and after a brief explanation of the project's details, it was clear she was from the technical department. She understood quickly, and her questions were specific and on point, making for a lively conversation that left me feeling refreshed. After finishing our business discussion, I left the company feeling stretched. Having visited several companies, I felt like it had the most potential. Thinking I should quickly consult with my boss, I glanced at my watch to see it was just before noon. Right on time for lunch. I figured I might as well grab a bite nearby to sort my farts before heading back to work. As I walked a bit, I happened upon a diner. Entering through its slightly faded blue curtain, eyesight was more than half full. We settled into the seats designated for two, and after stowing my bag in the luggage space, we began to browse through the lunch menu. After some deliberation, we ended up ordering the daily special for lunch. While sipping water and casually scanning the room, I noticed it had filled up completely. There were even a few people lined up near the entrance, waiting for a seat, and the staff were asking if customers wouldn't mind sharing tables. When they came to me with the same request, I saw no reason to refuse. To my surprise, the person brought to share my table was none other than Emily Sanders. We both recognized each other and exclaimed in surprise,
Oh,
"Ah!" We realized it at the same moment and exclaimed in surprise simultaneously. The person in front of me was Emily. With a slightly bashful demeanor, she gave a small nod and took the seat across from me.
what a coincidence.
Yes, I was just about to grab some lunch before heading back.
This place is great, good value, generous portions, and delicious. I recommend it.
Seemingly irregular, she placed his order with the server without even looking at the menu, and then set her Dell phone down on the table. Attached to what appeared to be her cell phone was a strap featuring an old, faded light blue minivan, which inadvertently caught my eye. Hey, isn't that one of our company's models?
Yes, I've loved this model since I was a kid. My dad got me this strap when I was in elementary school. It means a lot to me, and I still cherish it.
Her eyes lighting up with genuine affection for cars.
Actually, my late dad worked in your company's development department. He was involved in developing this minivan and used to tell me all about it, which sparked my interest in the automotive industry.
I see. My dad was also part of that minivan project. Maybe they knew each other.
If that's the case, it's quite a fascinating connection. You and your dad seem to have ties to the same company.
Well, you're quite impressive yourself. Honestly, isn't it tough being a woman in a technical role in this industry?
Sure, it can be challenging. I often hear things like because you're a woman, despite being a woman, or for a woman, which can be quite tiresome. But that just motivates me to prove them wrong.
She replied brightly. That sight struck me as incredibly noble, and I couldn't help but feel it looked quite cool. Afterward, I decided to proceed with making Emily's company our top choice for the contract. Although all the companies we considered had excellent technical capabilities and their representatives were trustworthy, Emily's company stood out for its exceptional technical prowess. Moreover, it was clear Emily was genuinely passionate about cars, and I felt that working with her would lead to the creation of something great. In the process of working towards the final agreement, I made several visits to Emily's company to discuss specifications and contract her. Through these discussions, she and I became close, reaching a point where we could talk openly and comfortably. After our meetings, it became a natural habit for us to head to the usual diner without either of us formally suggesting it, where we spent many days engaging in light-hearted and enjoyable conversations. It felt like everything was going smoothly. After stopping by the factory to prepare for the internal meeting scheduled for tomorrow, I was in the office reviewing documents when I realized that I was missing some materials related to the contract with Emily's company. I realized I had left some contract-related documents at Emily's company. It is clearly my mistake. Feeling somewhat apologetic, I arranged a meeting with Emily. When I mentioned it might take some time to prepare, so I hope you don't mind waiting, she graciously accepted, which was a relief to me. If I were to return to the headquarters first and then head over, it would be past Emily's company's regular working hours. Feeling it might be a bit rude, but considering I was only there to pick up documents, I decided to head to Emily's company still in my work clothes. Upon arrival, I learned that she was still preparing the documents. I was escorted to the usual reception room by a young female office worker, who seemed to be a new employee covering for Emily. Just as I was about to reach for the iced coffee she had served, something happened. Suddenly, a can from the side swiftly snatched away the coffee. Cold. Before I could even react, the coffee was spilled on me. I was completely baffled, unsure of what had just happened. Confused and looking up, I saw a middle-aged man holding the empty cup, looking down at me with a sneer.
Hey, maybe that dirty work outfit of yours got a bit cleaner, huh? You should be thankful.
Excuse me.
I don't know if you're a subcontractor or a bottom-rung worker, but who permitted you to barge into the reception room? The representative from Murphy Motors is going to be here any minute now. Get out of here, quick. Come on, scram, you slowpoke scum.
With a twisted smile, the middle-aged man grabbed my arm, pulled me up, and forcibly made me stand. The pain from being grabbed and pulled up made me wince, and just then, the door to the reception room was flung open with a bang.
Truman, what are you doing?
What? Just waking up a piece of trash, bottom-rung worker who doesn't know his place? Can't you see? Useless women should stay out of the way.
Truman, what on earth are you saying? This man is a representative from Murphy Motors. Let go of him immediately.
No way. A man dressed in these filthy work clothes and looking like he's from the bottom rung couldn't possibly be an employee of that top tire company. Emily, have you finally lost it?
The man referred to as Manager Truman roughly let go of my arm. Then, to mock Emily, he tapped his temple with his index finger in a derisive gesture. Stunned by the outrageous behavior, I was furious at the man who was mocking Emily to no end. It's you who's out of your mind. Can't you even read the company name on the work clothes? I pointed to the chest area of my coffee-stained work clothes. Of course, it had the name Murphy Motors written on it. The color drained from Truman's face, who had been acting so arrogantly. Though it was an emergency that brought me here in this attire, isn't spilling coffee on someone more indicative of being out of line? Like Truman had done earlier, I tapped my temple area with my index finger to show him. I knew it wasn't good to stoop to his level, but I couldn't help but retort. His face, which had been pale, turned red like a boiled octopus in an instant.
Back.
He seemed like he wanted to yell at me, but somehow managed to hold on to the last bit of his sanity. I looked coldly at Truman, whose face was twisted in frustration. Since you've told me to leave, I will. Goodbye. I left the reception room and made my way to the entrance. Unfortunately, the sky was overcast, and it continued to pour rain heavily. I hesitated to ride the bus in my coffee-stained clothes and didn't have an umbrella. Just as I was about to call a taxi with my cell phone,
Nick.
Someone called me out. I turned around in surprise to see Emily running towards me with an umbrella and documents in her arms. Breathless, she reached me and offered the umbrella, looking concerned.
Nick, are you alright? Didn't get burned or anything?
Yes, luckily it was iced coffee, so I'm fine. You came all this way to check on me and even brought an umbrella.
Well, and I couldn't give you the documents earlier. But now, it's probably unnecessary, given what Truman did.
Thank you. As for the contract, I can't really decide anything right here and now, given it's a matter between companies and a large project.
Nick, please don't hesitate to speak your mind. It'd be their own fault if the contract is terminated.
She laughed it off as if she had come to terms with something. I was taken aback by Emily's unexpected behavior, thinking she was always so serious.
With this rain and your current state, if you don't mind, I can drive you.
That's too much. And aren't you still on the working hours?
It's fine. I'm planning to slam my resignation on the desk tomorrow anyway.
What? Resignation? You're leaving the company?
I've had enough of that manager for a while now. But today's outrageous act was the last straw. If you don't mind, would you listen to my venting?
Sure. I understand. I felt somewhat pressured by Emily's demeanor and nodded. Walking to the parking lot under the umbrella, Emily stopped in front of a white car and unlocked it.
Please, after you?
Thank you. I hesitantly got into her car. Sitting in the driver's seat, she asked, "Is it okay if I take you to your company?" To which I nodded. After starting the engine, she expertly set the destination on the car's GPS and began driving.
You know, the manager he spilled coffee on you earlier, Truman, to put it simply, he's a power-harassing, incompetent manager who got his job through connections.
Connections?
Yeah, connections. Apparently, he's the nephew of our company's CEO and he always flaunts that fact, bossing people around. He interferes everywhere, yells at his subordinates for no reason, and yet, he's utterly useless at his job.
Well, I can't believe there are still such blatant nepotism hires. Does the company's upper management recognize this and just let it slide?
I don't know. Our company's structure is outdated, and they don't take compliance seriously. There's no way for regular employees like us to report directly to the higher-ups without going through our bosses. It's like everyone in a managerial position is just watching Truman's face, making it difficult to go through other managers and leaving him unchecked.
Emily sighed deeply.
And there was a senior employee who tried to fight and report Truman's wrongdoings to the higher-ups. But Truman crushed him with power. He intentionally caused damages and blamed the senior, forcing him into a situation where he had no choice but to resign.
What? He deliberately made mistakes to harm the company because he didn't like someone.
It's unbelievable, right? But for him, harassing someone he dislikes is more important than what happens to the company.
It's unbelievable. And the fact that the company lets this go on is unbelievable too.
Just today, he tried to take credit for the contract with Murphy Motors, barging in without knowing anything about the deal. Even though the whole company was buzzing about this contract, Truman was clueless until today. Of course, I had submitted reports and discussed it in meetings multiple times, but he never looked at the reports or paid attention in meetings. It's like he has no interest in work at all.
And to think he spilled coffee on the major client. In a way, that's almost impressive.
The power of assumption is strong. He probably thought that the person in charge of such a big deal at the major company would be some elite in a nice suit.
And he never imagined that person would be me, in work clothes, even though the company name was on my chest.
That's just the kind of person Truman is. There have been many employees who, like the senior, either resigned because they couldn't stand him or were driven out for various reasons, all because of him. People who genuinely love crafting things and are serious and just end up leaving. And those who stay are either sucking up to Truman or are the type who prefer to avoid conflict. I've put up with his tyranny because I love this industry, but I've reached my limit.
I see. I had no idea there was such a problematic person at your company. I was entrusted with this project to learn how to judge people and companies, but I still have a lot to learn.
Well, normally, you wouldn't know about internal relationships from the position of a client. Maybe detectives or police officers are better suited to sensing that kind of thing than corporate employees.
After making a joke, Emily sighed again, so deeply it was hard to tell how many times she had done so before. She must have been troubled by this for a long time. There might not be much I can do for her, considering all she has endured. But there is one thing. Using this method feels like stooping to that man's level, so I'd rather avoid it if possible. But desperate times call for desperate measures. After some hesitation, I decided to bring it up. What if, just what if, there was a way to get back at Truman? What would you do? Emily looked surprised. Perhaps she is wondering why I would suddenly suggest such a thing. After thinking it over for a moment, she nodded.
If there's a way, I'd want to take action. People like him will ruin the company. We can't let someone who destroys the environment for good craftsmanship go unchecked, not to mention wasting the efforts of seniors and colleagues who have fought before. But, Nick, what kind of method are we talking about?
It's simple. Fight connections with connections. It's a bit childish, but they started it, so it's fair game, right? She looked puzzled, but I gave her an encouraging smile. After dropping me off at my company, I immediately headed to a certain place. Despite the surprised looks from my colleagues I passed by, seemingly taken aback by my attire and the unusual atmosphere, I didn't let it bother me and proceeded to knock on the door of a specific room. A few days later, I had Emily come to our company's conference room under the guise of a business meeting. As I knocked and opened the door to the conference room, I could feel Emily gasp in surprise behind me.
What? President Murphy?
The president of our company waited for her inside the room. Emily, being a car enthusiast, recognized the president. She was stunned, standing there as if frozen, at the unexpected presence.
Hey, you must be Emily. My son always seems to be in your care.
Is he your son?
After expressing her surprise, Emily seemed to ponder for a moment. She was likely trying to recall if she knew someone with the surname Murphy. The president watched his reaction with a bit of amusement, then turned to me.
It's the man standing next to you, Emily.
Really?
Emily looked at my face. I nodded silently.
Seriously?
Sure.
I had heard that your dad also worked for the same company, but I never imagined you were the CEO's son. Oh, but the last names are different. Ah, complicated family matters.
Emily seemed confused as he glanced back and forth between me and President Murphy before asking me hesitantly. No, it's not about hiding the fact that I'm the CEO's son. I used the name Addison at the company. Addison is my mom's maiden name, and my real name is Nick Murphy. Only the executives and some employees know I'm the CEO's son. Born into a privileged family, both of my parents, despite being busy, poured all their love into raising me. I loved my family business, cars, and I admired my dad who worked hard for the company, striving to follow in his footsteps. However, this perfect environment also bred unwarranted jealousy and resentment. Achievements in exams or competitions were often attributed to parental influence, not my own efforts. Whether it was sports or arts, it might be a compliment for them, but there was no way that I could be pleased when they said, "If your parents are good, the son will grow up well." Friends, perhaps jokingly, teased me for being a rich kid. In high school, my first girlfriend bragged behind my back that her boyfriend was the CEO's son. Being known everywhere as the CEO's son felt more like a shackle than an honor, which is why I wanted to hide my identity and test my own abilities while I was still young.
This guy is stubborn. He insisted on not using any connections, took our company's job hunting on his own merit, and joined the development team. Of course, I had asked the head of development to give him tasks outside of development as well to gain experience. Sending him to deal with Emily Company was part of that process. I wanted him to learn how to judge other companies and people, but I never expected my son to return home having had coffee spilled on him.
We are truly sorry for the misconduct of our employee.
That's all right. We don't want an apology from you. It needs to come from Truman himself to be meaningful.
Yes, that makes sense.
Emily agreed, with her expression complex. She is likely thinking that man would not easily apologize.
To make him reflect, we might have to intimidate him a bit.
Intimidate?
Yes, it would be good if he came to regret his actions and apologized alone. But from what I've heard, I doubt he's that type of man. So, we're thinking of going directly to the CEO. Truman's tyranny has caused many talented individuals to leave, right? Your company is honest and has technical prowess. It would be a significant loss for us to let it go, and we truly hope for reform. To that end, let's bring up the contract, though a little pushy, and say that we can trust a company that disrespects compliance like this.
My dad said, pausing before smiling gently. It was not the expression of a CEO, but the gentle, caring face of a dad shown at home.
And you know, Emily, your dad was one of my best colleagues. I've heard a lot about you from him. I personally cannot forgive a man who causes pain to the dear daughter of my valued employees, so I hope you'll allow me to meddle a little.
Mr. Murphy, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The meeting to discuss these issues was scheduled for a week later, outside of business hours, in Emily Company's reception room. The contrast between Truman, the manager's shocked expression upon seeing me, and the bewildered Truman, the CEO, was slightly amusing. Emily, brought along under the pretext of being a deal representative, looked nervous. "Hello, Mr. Truman. It's been a while since our last encounter."
Good afternoon, Mr. Truman. It seems my son was under your care recently.
We greeted Truman warmly. Truman looked back at us with a slightly puzzled expression.
Is he your son? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Really, it was just a few days ago. My son, dressed in work clothes, apparently had the misfortune of visiting your reception room, where you kindly decided to clean his dirty work clothes by spilling coffee on them.
At my dad's words, Truman seemed to finally realize it was me he had treated so rudely. His face turned from confusion to bright red, glaring at me sharply.
What? Are you son of the CEO? Are you?
Hey, what kind of attitude is that towards a client CEO and his son? More importantly, What Mr. Murphy is referring to, what's that about?
I have no idea. Perhaps he's mistaken.
No, it's true. I was there.
Emily said, speaking up firmly for the first time. Truman, the manager, shot her a glare as if to warn her not to say more. But Emily, prepared to resign if necessary, was unfazed.
While I was preparing the documents, Nick was waiting in the reception room, where Truman barged in and said, "Looks like your dirty work clothes got a bit cleaner. Be grateful." After hearing Truman's shouting, I rushed over and found Nick drenched in coffee and Truman yelling at him.
Is that true?
No, it was a misunderstanding.
As she said, "You grabbed my arm, claiming this wasn't a place for subcontractors or bottom-tier workers like me. It seems your company has quite the prestigious employee training program." I interjected, forcing Truman into silence. The CEO's face drained of color.
What have you done? You should apologize to him.
I didn't realize he was a client.
That's no excuse.
The CEO demanded a deep apology from Truman. It seemed the CEO at least had a minimum level of decency. I was almost impressed by Truman's audacity to still challenge me in this situation. Seeing the opportunity, I spoke up. An apology for spilling coffee on me is sufficient. Fortunately, the stains were removed by cleaning, and we won't terminate a contract over this. However, Truman, you mentioned you didn't realize I was a client.
And what about it?
That implies it would have been acceptable if I were an employee or subcontractor of your company. Mr. CEO, haven't you noticed an unusual increase in resignations from Truman's department recently? One can easily imagine how someone who throws coffee on strangers behaves with their employees. Personally, I wouldn't want to work under such a supervisor.
I've only heard a bit of the story, so I'm not jumping to conclusions. But I believe a good company is made by its employees. A company can be improved or worsened by its staff. Employees who oppress good workers are honestly like a cancer. I strongly suggest conducting an investigation.
You're right. I'm embarrassed to admit I was unaware of these issues. We will conduct an internal investigation, and if these allegations prove true, we will take strict action.
What? Are you really going to believe what outsiders say?
The company isn't a playground. What joy do you find in acting like a bully? You are behaving yourself at home until the investigation is complete.
The CEO said with a sigh of exasperation. True to Truman's defense, the mere words of an outsider wouldn't constitute proof. Yet, ironically, the manager's behavior provided the strongest evidence. The investigation reached out not only to current employees, but also to those who had left the company. The results of the investigation were as expected. Half a year later, due to our busy schedules, we hadn't had the chance to meet up for a while, so today we had planned to have a meal together. Naturally, we chose that familiar diner. It seemed new menus had been added to the menu list since our last visit. As I was looking over the menu with interest, I heard someone call out, "Nick," and I looked up. "Emily, it's been a while. You look well."
Do I? Yeah, maybe. I've been really enjoying my work lately. It's all thanks to you and your dad.
I'm glad to hear that. I was worried you might be overexerting yourself. By the way, what happened to Truman? Since then, she and I have grown even closer, frequently exchanging personal messages through our private contacts. Our relationship continues to be like that of comrades who share a love for cars and dedication to our work. Now we're closer than ever. We don't just talk about work and cars, we talk about hobbies and family. I enjoyed listening to her weekend and holiday stories. And now we converse in a more casual manner. Despite knowing that I'm the son of a major corporation CEO, she treats me the same as before. Lately, I find this relationship with her to be very comfortable.
Actually, I haven't told you, but Truman was transferred to the factory. There was talk of firing him, but it was decided to keep him under surveillance instead, fearing he might cause trouble elsewhere.
Is it safe to keep him around?
Yeah, there's a foreman at the factory, kind of like a master craftsman, and he's been a friend of the CEO for a long time. He reports directly to the CEO if anything happens, so the former manager can't just pull ring anymore. Because he's loud and strict, I bet he's genuinely intimidating. Truman, he only ever bullied those weaker than him.
I see, so that's a way to discipline someone. Straightening out twisted attitudes seems most effective with that kind of approach.
Really? Those who were complicit in wrongdoing or engaged in power harassment along with the former manager were all disciplined at once, so that was probably a bigger ordeal. But things are definitely improving. Everyone has become motivated to create products that are second to none, just like before. Someday, Nick, I'll surprise you with a product so impressive. You better be ready for it.
The sight of her slightly mischievous yet proud smile was somewhat dazzling and felt incredibly beautiful to me. Life is unpredictable. Just like Emily, who once contemplated resigning, is now laughing with eyes shining brightly. Just as the man who had caused so much trouble and acted selfishly received his due consequences. Life can change for the better or worse at any moment. That's why it's essential to make decisions and take action. I too should muster my courage. With determination, I reached into my bag and pulled out a pair of movie tickets.
What's this? Just second and third-rate resumes, huh? No one from Harvard University, I see.
A Harvard University graduate interviewer said while looking at the resumes of job seekers who had come to the interview venue. He continued,
You know, I graduated from Harvard University. Get it? Unlike you guys, I'm top-notch.
He was boasting about being a Harvard University graduate. It wasn't clear if it was necessary for this interview, but he kept posing questions that seemed as difficult as the entrance exams for Stanford University or Harvard University. The job seekers at the venue were so overwhelmed by the difficulty that they hung their heads, unable to answer. Amidst this, I was answering all the questions. The interviewers seemed to take a dislike to me and started making unreasonable comments.
You're pretty cocky, huh? All right, solve this. If you can solve this, you're hired on the spot, and I'll give you $2 million.
He was thinking it impossible, with a smug look on his face as he handed over a piece of paper. The printout contained a math question written by hand. Looking at the question on the printout, I murmured just one word. Math, huh?
Well, I think it's impossible for someone with your caliber.
He probably wanted to say that there's no way I could beat him, a Harvard University graduate, but looking at the question in front of me, I confidently responded, You better get that $2 million ready now. The interviewer didn't yet understand the meaning of my confident words, and an unexpected fate awaited him. My name is Michael Johnson. I've grown up in an ordinary family, just an average person, average in sports, average in studies, neither good nor bad, just average. If you asked my classmates, they'd probably say normal. Everyone considers me average, but in reality, there's one thing I'm truly confident in. That's a strong influence of my upbringing. I'm about to share a bit of that story. My family has run a store since my grandparents' generation. Coming home from kindergarten, it became a routine for me to help out in the store with my grandmother. Having watched my grandmother interact with customers since I was young, I was able to do mental arithmetic by the first grade. That'll be $13.69.
Oh, Michael, that's amazing. You can already do such difficult calculations.
While saying that, a regular customer pulled out two $10 bills. I took the money with a proud look and gave him the change. Here's $6.31 change.
You can even calculate the change. Wait, did you use a calculator just now?
No, it's mental math. Hearing that, the regular customer looked surprised.
That's impressive. Have you never used a calculator?
No, I haven't. My grandparents' store didn't have a cash register because they did all the calculations with an abacus. There wasn't any modern system like you'd find in supermarkets or convenience stores. I learned how to use the abacus and do calculations from my grandmother.
You've just started elementary school, right?
Yeah, I just entered this year.
Well, Michael, you're smart. Grandma, he's going to be promising in the future.
My grandparents always praised me, their proud grandson. Initially, I did calculations with the abacus I was taught to use. However, after seeing my grandmother calculate without using an abacus, I wanted to try it myself and asked her to teach me the tricks. It made me happy to be praised, so I helped out in the store every day, and mental arithmetic became fun for me. Even though I said I had learned mental arithmetic at the first grade level, there were still mistakes. I messed up again.
It's okay to make mistakes. Let's try it one more time.
Even so, my grandparents encouraged me to practice mental arithmetic. They praised me when my answers were correct. Initially, I continued because I was happy to be praised, but gradually, I began to enjoy doing the calculations. The feeling of numbers fitting together in my mind like a puzzle, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. The fact that there was always an answer was fascinating, and I enjoyed it as if I were playing a game. Before I knew it, doing calculations had become my area of expertise, and it has now become the one thing I am truly confident in. Having an area of expertise in mental arithmetic made me start wondering about many other things.
What's up? You've been staring at the sky for a while.
Yeah, I was wondering why the sky changes color.
You were thinking about something that difficult.
My mom was incredibly surprised by my unexpected question. Once something piqued my interest, I wanted to know the answer. Like with calculations, I wanted a clear answer. So, whenever something caught my interest, I would always ask my parents, grandparents, and homeroom teacher. My parents and teachers were happy about my curiosity and gladly taught me. If they could answer right away, they did so on the spot, and if they didn't know, they went as far as to research to teach me. Understanding something I didn't know felt the same as solving a calculation, and I found it fun, becoming more and more engrossed. Collecting knowledge became my hobby, and I was always asking why and how. I was nicknamed Teach Me Kid by those around me, mimicked and teased. But my curiosity never stopped, and by the time I was in 3rd grade, it had powered up even more. As the trivia king, I was respected within the school. The reasons why the sky changes color, why the shape of the moon changes, why rainbows have 7 colors, how clouds are formed, the characteristics of dinosaurs, the ecology of bugs, plants, and flowers, the constellations of the seasons and the myths associated with them. I learned anything and everything that interested me. There was anyone else my age who knew as much about everything as I did. Entering middle school, new subjects sparked my curiosity again. I enjoyed acquiring new knowledge, and the trivia I had accumulated so far somewhat helped, making it feel like the world was expanding. I always liked reading, but upon entering middle school, I enjoyed reading literature with a more sophisticated level of thought. I was particularly drawn to chemistry. The properties of substances, the concept of atoms, and scientific reactions in experiments were all fascinating. German was challenging at first. However, once I started reading novels in German, I naturally became able to read and write. The different grammar from English sparked my interest again. Although I hadn't delved deep into it during elementary school, learning more about history was also fun. Looking back at history, I could see how America came to be operated under its current system. The background of America's economic development, its connections with other countries, and the global influence America has. Unable to contain my curiosity, I read history books beyond the textbooks to study. Having been skilled at mental arithmetic, I was instantly captivated by mathematics when I encountered it. Mathematics is truly simple. There's always an answer. Even if the answer can't be divided evenly, it means there is an answer that can't be divided evenly. In other words, it doesn't end ambiguously. Regarding proof problems, the beauty of proving correctness appealed to me. Until now, I found joy in arriving at answers, using formulas to do so. And I thought the process of arriving at those answers was beautiful. The more problems I solved, the more I got engrossed in finding out which formulas would lead to elegant proofs. During my fun middle school days, I continued to help out at my grandparents' store as always. With my quick and error-free mental arithmetic, my grandparents came to rely on me confidently to manage the store. Studying mathematics at school and practicing mental arithmetic at my grandparents' store. Thanks to this lifestyle, my calculation skills had surpassed the middle school level. In my freshman year of high school, the math teacher, who was in charge, had to be hospitalized for a year due to illness. The temporary math teacher who came was a man named Kevin Martin. He appeared older due to his prematurely white hair but was a young 23-year-old teacher. His passion for mathematics was unmistakably evident. Because he loved it, his teaching was not mechanical, making it very understandable and fun.
High school classes, you have to use the formulas being taught to get the correct answers. Well, it's the most efficient way to solve problems. But I think it's also okay if you can find the answer taking a longer route.
Maybe I can talk to Mr. Martin easily. I felt a closeness to Mr. Martin and thought I might ask questions just like before whenever I didn't understand something. Mr. Martin, can I ask you something? I need help with this part.
Where is it? Oh, really? This is amazing.
Mr. Martin was surprised at the question I brought, perhaps because it was unexpectedly challenging. And for good reason. The question I brought wasn't from the textbook used in class or a reference book for freshmen. If it were at the freshman level, I wouldn't need to ask the teacher. I had already advanced my studies to the level that high school seniors study for entrance exams.
This is free official practice tests, isn't it? Are you studying from this?
Mr. Martin looked at the free official practice test with pleasure.
This brings back memories. I used to solve tests from free official practice tests too. So, what don't you understand?
Mr. Martin seemed to love mathematics. Seeing Mr. Martin's reaction, I felt relieved that my sense of closeness was not misplaced. I became even more immersed in mathematics than before. Mr. Martin taught mathematics in a very fun and understandable way. His slightly different perspective from other teachers overflowed my curiosity. Above all, Mr. Martin looked innocent and joyful when talking about mathematics. From then on, learning mathematics from Mr. Martin became a part of my daily routine. He recommended workbooks to me and even created his own. I thought the questions Mr. Martin made were very beautiful. I couldn't help but enjoy proving them. He also secretly taught me how to solve not covered in class. Mr. Martin made even the formulas and geometric questions I struggled with understandable, making mathematics even more enjoyable and captivating for me. One day, as usual, after school, I went to Mr. Martin, who seemed to be deep in thought. Hesitating to interrupt, I still spoke up. Mr. Martin, I have something I'd like to learn today too.
Michael, right. All right, let's talk about mathematics today too.
Mr. Martin always talked about mathematics with enthusiasm. Whether his counterpart was a high school student, he couldn't help but be happy and enjoy talking about mathematics. A pure love for the subject was evident. Spending time talking about mathematics with the teacher after school became indispensable for me, and Mr. Martin and I transcended the teacher-student relationship to become comrades who loved mathematics. You really love mathematics, don't you, Mr. Martin?
That's the same for you, isn't it? Oh, yes. I have a favor to ask of you today.
As he said so, Mr. Martin took out a piece of copy paper and began writing on it with practiced ease. When he finished writing, he handed it to me.
Here, this is my request to you.
I was surprised when I saw his request. What was written there was not a math question.
Create an original math workbook by Michael Johnson and surpass the math teacher, Kevin Martin.
What is this? I was so surprised at the unexpected request that I was speechless. Ignoring my reaction, the teacher continued.
Michael, you've solved enough questions already. In terms of solving them, you're at the college level. That's why I want you to go beyond that. From being the solver, why not try becoming the creator of problems? I'm sure you'll find the world of mathematics expanding even more.
Becoming the creator, the world expanding.
Exactly. I can't let your talent go to waste. I want it to blossom. The world seen from the perspective of solving is different from that of creating. Of course, the world that becomes visible is different too.
Mr. Martin was passionately explaining.
I believe you, of all people, will surely discover the hidden fascinations of mathematics.
Mr. Martin trusts me that much. I wanted to respond to his trust, and I also wanted to see the fascinations of mathematics that I hadn't seen yet. Thank you. I'll give it a try.
All right. It won't be easy, but give it a go. I'm waiting for the questions you create, Michael.
After returning home, I immediately started on the homework, but it was harder than I thought. If it were about creating exercises for use in class, I could do it right away. However, the assignment this time was to create an ultra-difficult one that even Mr. Martin couldn't solve. Yet, despite finding it difficult, I also found it enjoyable. I became so engrossed in the homework that I went to school sleep-deprived, and after school, I hurriedly went to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, I made it. What do you think? Mr. Martin took the sheet from me and checked it. However, he solved it quite easily. I thought so. You solved it. After my words, Mr. Martin said,
It's very well made. It's a very elegant. I can really tell how much you love mathematics, but, you know.
Mr. Martin looked a bit disappointed as he looked at my question. But, what is it?
You focused on making the question beautiful, and neglected its difficulty.
Ah, exactly. He hit the nail on the head. Indeed, halfway through, I stopped considering the difficulty level, thinking that if I were to create a question, it should be beautiful. Seeing me looking down, somewhat disappointed and sad, Mr. Martin said,
However, to be able to create this much from the start is quite something. Next time, bring me a work you're confident in. I'm looking forward to Michael's challenge.
Yes, next time, I'll definitely impress you, Mr. Martin.
Good. That's the spirit.
I started creating again as soon as I got home. I was glad that Mr. Martin had expectations of me, and I think I began to feel the joy of creating exercises. However, I didn't want to make a question that was just difficult. Beautiful and difficult. I worked on creating such every single day. And finally, it was completed. This has to be it. Full of confidence, I went to show it to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin took a bit longer to solve it than the first one I presented. I thought that the fact he took some time to solve it meant it was a better question than the last one. However, Mr. Martin gave me a strict assessment.
Yes, it's a difficult one. It made me think a bit. You did well, but take another look at this.
Saying that, he showed me my question.
Did you notice anything?
I realized what he meant. It's not beautiful. I mean, it's messy.
Right, it can't be called beautiful. You were too focused on increasing its difficulty, weren't you? Unfortunately, I can't give a passing mark for this.
A question that would impress Mr. Martin was not easy to create. It wasn't enough for it to be just difficult. It also had to be beautiful. The quality of beauty and difficulty had to be maintained to create a question that was truly mine. I continued creating tirelessly, and before I knew it, 3 months had passed. Creating questions is this difficult, ho? I was experiencing what Mr. Martin meant by the perspective of creating. Surely, not just anyone could do this, but he believed I could. To live up to that belief, I couldn't give up. And on the 35th attempt, this is it. I created a math question that felt right. I confidently went to show it him. Mr. Martin, I did it. He silently took the question I confidently handed him and began to solve it. As usual, he was swiftly solving. I watched intently as his pen danced across the paper. Then suddenly, Mr. Martin's dancing pen stopped.
Oh, Michael, this is incredible.
Incredible. What is it?
Ha ha ha. I'm stumped. I can't solve this. It's insolvable for me. You did it. Excellent job.
He was not frustrated that he couldn't solve it. He was delighted by it. I managed to create that even the Mr. Martin couldn't solve. Realizing what had happened, I jumped for joy with him. Yes, mission cleared.
This is fantastic. No matter from which angle you approach it, the solution doesn't reveal itself. It's difficult yet simple and beautiful. Is there really such a question? You've created something even better than I imagined. It's frustrating, but I'm even more pleased. Well done, Michael.
It's all thanks to you, Mr. Martin. If you hadn't suggested it, I would never have thought to create a math question. Mr. Martin and I fist bumped in a victorious pose. At this moment, Mr. Martin and I truly transcended the teacher-student relationship, becoming comrades who loved mathematics. The time and experiences shared with him gave me even more confidence. That much was certain. During the summer break of my freshman year in high school, Mr. Martin called me. Mr. Martin, what's up?
Sorry to bother you. I wanted to tell you as soon as possible.
He began with a slightly sad look. Apparently, Mr. Smith, who had been on medical leave, was returning to school earlier than expected. As a result, Mr. Martin would not be returning to school for the second term.
It's really sad to leave without saying goodbye to everyone. At least I wanted to tell you personally.
Facing the reality that I had to say goodbye to Mr. Martin was something I didn't want to accept. But it was already a decided matter. There was nothing I could do. I had no choice but to accept it. And there were other trials for me as well. It was decided that my grandparents' store would close. The place that could be called my origin, my grandparents' store. Mr. Martin, you elevated my math skills. Important things were suddenly gone. I felt a fierce sense of loneliness, as if I had lost my place as well. But right after that, there was no time to feel lonely. First, both my grandparents began showing symptoms of dementia. With both of them affected, caring for them at home became difficult for our family. Reluctantly, we had to admit my grandparents into a nursing home. After settling my grandparents into the facility and finally catching a breath, my father collapsed. He had a pre-existing condition, and his health wasn't great, but it worsened due to the stress of caring for my grandparents. He was admitted to the hospital unconscious. 6 months later, my father passed away. Left behind were just my mother and me. We couldn't sustain our lives as they were. We sold the building and land we used as our home and store. With that money, we rented a cheap apartment and decided to live there, just the two of us. Given our current financial situation, going to university seemed difficult. I decided to get a job instead of pursuing higher education. Mom, I'll work after I graduate.
What are you talking about? I've saved enough for your expenses for university. Don't worry and go to college.
My mother said, handing me a bank book in my name.
You've always said you wanted to go to university. You worked hard studying for it, right?
Thank you, Mom. At least I'll go to a local public university. I'll also do part-time jobs to contribute to our living expenses. From then on, I devoted myself to studying for entrance exams and working part-time jobs. I didn't want to put all the burden on my mother. I worked hard to keep my grades up so I could receive scholarships for university, ensuring that, even if we couldn't afford luxuries, we could have a happy life supporting each other. Seeing my mother smiling in front of me, I seriously wondered if I should start working immediately, but I couldn't ignore her wish for me to go to university. In the end, I decided to attend the nearest local university from our home. Once I entered university, honestly, all I remember is studying and working part-time. I managed to complete all my credits in 3 years, dedicating the rest of my time to job hunting. This year, as a senior, everyone around me is also putting their full effort into job hunting. I, too, poured my energy into it without falling behind. I checked every company briefing and online session, actively participating. Honestly, I wasn't in a position to choose companies, but I had my non-negotiable conditions. I wanted to ease my mother's burden as much as possible, considering how much she had shouldered for me. I also planned to take on the responsibility for my grandparents' facility fees. I carefully checked not only the salary conditions but also the benefits and made my selections. I positively applied to the companies I had picked out. After applying to about 10 companies, I received an invitation for an interview from one. It's an hour by train from home. Remote work was an option if desired. It's a newly established IT company, but it offers internships. Thinking it was a pretty good offer, I decided to go for the interview anyway. Well, Mom, I'm off to the interview.
Okay, take care. Bye now.
I psyched myself up one last time while looking in the hallway mirror. Let's do this. I didn't intend to be nervous, but the unfamiliar dress suit and leather shoes seemed to heighten my anxiety. Looking back, I saw my mother sending me off with a gentle smile. My mother's smile eased my nerves a bit, and at the same time boosted my morale. Upon arriving at the interview venue, I saw a line of job-seeking peers at the reception. I joined the queue, completed the registration, and was then guided to the waiting area. About 10 minutes later, my name was called, and I headed to the room where the interview would be conducted. Entering the interview room, I introduced myself with my university and name. Although I thought I was accustomed to interviews from my part-time job experiences, I froze for a moment in the unfamiliar, tense atmosphere of the room. The interviewers were a man and a woman, young-looking, but being interviewers, they must hold positions of responsibility. Especially the man, who looked at me as if appraising me with a scrutinizing gaze. The female interviewer prompted me to sit with a please, to which I responded with a thank you and bowed slightly before sitting down. As soon as I sat down, the male interviewer started talking.
Today, I'll be conducting the interview. I'm Miller.
He introduced himself quickly. His fast-paced speaking caught my attention, but my nervousness was more overwhelming. The female interviewer also introduced herself, and all of us job seekers greeted in unison.
Pleased to meet you.
After the greetings, I handed my resume to the interviewers. The interviewer, Mr. Miller, was carefully examining each page of the resume. My nervousness increased even more.
What's this? Just a bunch of second and third-rate stuff. Nothing impressive.
It was Mr. Miller's first comment after reading through the resumes. His unexpected remark shocked all the job seekers, leaving us speechless. The female interviewer beside him frowned and sighed in disapproval. The atmosphere in the interview room went completely silent. However, Mr. Miller continued unabated.
You know, I graduated from Harvard University. Get it? Unlike you guys, I'm from a top-tier university. I was hoping there would be someone else from such here, but no one, huh?
Apparently, Mr. Miller was the type to boast about academic backgrounds. Then, Mr. Miller started asking questions.
So, Mr. Michael, here's a question for you.
Yes, please go ahead.
How many prime numbers are there between 1 and 100?
I was surprised by the question. What does this have to do with a job interview? I had expected questions about self-introduction, self-promotion, or motivation for applying.
Can't answer. I guess that's to be expected from a second-tier university student.
Mr. Miller seemed to think I couldn't answer because I was silent. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, 41, 43, 47, 53, 59, 61, 67, 71, 73, 79, 83, 89, 97. There are 25 in total.
I guess you could answer that after all.
Mr. Miller, seemingly eager to maintain his superiority, threw another question at me.
Next question then. Deborah Reed was the wife of Benjamin Franklin. But do you know the name of her another husband?
Was he annoyed that I answered the previous math question? This time, he posed a history question. But for me, known as the Trivia King, it was an easy one. It's John Rogers. Mr. Miller clearly showed his frustration on his face. Yet, the questions didn't stop. He kept throwing questions at me that one wouldn't know just from attending classes, but I kept answering them correctly one after another. Mr. Miller seemed unable to contain his frustration any longer, his face turning red.
This is just...
He mumbled to himself while starting to write something on a notebook. Then, tearing a piece from the notebook, he said, "Solve this. There's no way you can, though." With an irritated tone and a flushed face, he handed me the torn piece of paper. He must have been quite annoyed. It took me a while to read the hastily scribbled question, but when I finally did, I was taken aback. Is this, maybe? Seeing my puzzled look, Mr. Miller smugly said,
What's the matter? Can't solve it? Well, that's expected. No way you can, coming from a second-tier university.
Mr. Miller, pleased with himself for getting the upper hand, continued,
If you solve this, you're hired on the spot. I'll even prepare a $2 million signing bonus for you.
Mr. Miller must have thought it was impossible for me to solve. That at my university level, it was absolutely out of question. He must have been certain of it. Indeed, it was a difficult question. Most people seeing it for the first time wouldn't be able to solve it. However, I knew this question. Mr. Miller, please don't go back on your word about the immediate hiring. Oh, and you might want to start preparing the $2 million right now. Mr. Miller, thinking I was just bluffing, didn't take me seriously. But I finished answering in a minute and returned the paper to Mr. Miller. He was surprised at both my confidence and the speed of my response, and even more so upon seeing my answer.
What? How did you?
Is my answer correct? My words seemed to bring back his frustration. You just guessed, right? There's no way that's correct. Do you know the answer to this question?
What are you talking about?
I don't know where you found this, but I created it when I was in high school. There's no way I wouldn't know the answer. Where did you learn about this, Mr. Miller? Only my mentor and I should know about it. I said while looking over the question. Let me ask again. When did you learn about this? Mr. Miller, biting his lip, remained silent and looked down. Suddenly, the door to the room opened, and a man walked in. The moment I saw him, I was filled with nostalgia and joy. What, Mr. Martin? Is that you, really?
President, why are you here?
It was Mr. Martin, my high school math mentor and fellow math enthusiast. I had researched the company's website before the interview, and the president's name was listed differently. But Mr. Miller called Mr. Martin the president. I was shocked and speechless.
Michael, it's been a while.
It's been a long time. I had no idea Mr. Martin was the president. It turned out, after his stint as a temporary high school teacher, Mr. Martin joined the company through mid-career recruitment. With his brilliant mind, Mr. Martin made a significant impact at the company and was appointed president this spring. It had just been a short while since his inauguration, so the website still listed the previous president. That made sense. So that's why Mr. Miller knew about that math problem.
By the way, Mr. Miller, I wanted to ask, was it necessary for our company's interview to include math and history trivia?
Number that is.
I don't recall writing anything like that in the interview manual I created. Can you explain why you decided to ignore the manual?
Well, I thought it would be a good way to gauge if someone is truly talented.
I see. That's commendable, your enthusiasm as an interviewer. Thank you. However, excellence isn't determined by academic background alone. Talented individuals exist regardless of their education, like Mr. Michael here.
After a pause, President Martin continued.
Even if someone graduated from a prestigious university, judging abilities solely based on academic background doesn't make them excellent. You understand, Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller was left speechless by President Martin's words. He was hanging his head in silence.
Sorry to interrupt the interview. Let me take a look at everyone's resumes.
With that, the president reviewed all the job seekers' resumes.
Everyone has impressive backgrounds. All of you here are passed for the first round. I can't promise a signing bonus, but I'd like you to take the second round as well.
A few days later, I passed the first round. I received a notification for the second round. Although I was a bit puzzled by the presence of people like Mr. Miller, thinking that President Martin was in charge gave me confidence that it would be a fulfilling place to work. I smoothly advanced through the second and third rounds, finally reaching the day of the final exam, a meeting with the president. The president was Mr. Martin. I was nervous, but our conversation ended up revolving around mathematics, just like old times. Was this all right? I wondered, but soon after, I received a notification of my successful application. I successfully joined the IT company presided over by President Martin. It wasn't because I was acquainted with President Martin that I was given preferential treatment or through any connections. I followed the proper procedures and secured the job offer through my own abilities. Mr. Miller, now a senior colleague in the same department, no longer boasted about his academic background. Working together, I realized Mr. Miller was actually very competent. As seniors and juniors, we could talk easily, and I asked him why he brought up academic backgrounds. Mr. Miller mentioned that many of the younger generation have a wealth of knowledge in computers and often surpass him in skill. It seems his actions stemmed from a defensive mindset, not wanting to be underestimated by new employees. Hearing this, I found Mr. Miller somewhat endearing. He's now the senior colleague I trust the most in the company. I aim to become someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with President Martin someday. With a reliable senior like Mr. Miller, I look forward to improving and honing my skills together.
Making such a basic mistake. How long do you think you've been with the company?
The manager seemed to mistake the documents I processed on behalf of a junior for my own work. I reluctantly made a formal apology. I'm terribly sorry. I'll be more careful in the future.
There won't be a next time.
That day, I ended up submitting my resignation to the manager. It was sad to leave a place I had finally found as my own, but I had no regrets. Now, I could really get away from that person. A week after resigning, the manager and I bumped into each other at sushi restaurant.
What a coincidence.
She is clearly in a good mood, anticipating the high-end sushi. Unaware of who was waiting in the private room, she walked down the corridor beside me.
Speaking of which, why are you wearing a suit if you quit? Oh, right, you're job hunting, that stuff.
I wasn't thinking about getting back at the manager at all, but for everyone's sake, I returned her smile with determination. I've just been appointed as the new president, ma'am. I'll be sure to handle things strictly as your superior from now on. I slowly opened the sliding door to the private room. In front of a top-notch sushi chef's presentation, I forced a polite smile. My name is Sean Turner. I'm an ordinary person with no particular talents, but my father is the president of a large company that can afford to invite famous sushi chefs to our home. Despite inheriting my father's intellect and graduating from Harvard University, I stumbled during elementary school entrance exams and have never managed to catch up. Working at a subsidiary of my father's company, I'm still not even a senior staff member at 39. Naturally, my parents have never acknowledged me, favoring only my brother.
At some point, you need to at least make senior staff, or should I just announce you're my son?
My father casually mentioned while eating an eel sushi. He always did this. Behind the scenes, he exerted pressure, and during my school years, teachers treated me specially. Once, I deliberately answered a test incorrectly to see what would happen, only for that test to be the only one not to have retake. I've understood since I was a child that I'm not meant to be treated specially. Every time I received different treatment from other students, I felt miserable. In this regard, my current company was comfortable. Initially, I tried to get a job at a company unrelated to my father to get away from him, but he opposed it. Under the condition that our relationship wouldn't be disclosed, I joined my current company. I went through the same interview process as everyone else, and no one knows I'm the son of the parent company's president. For the first time, I feel like I've found a place where I belong in this company, where they give me a fair evaluation by saying, "You're not cut out to be a chief." I'm sorry, but could you please not disclose that we're related, Dad? I think it would cause trouble for you too.
He's right. If people found out someone like him is your son, it'd lower your reputation.
My brother added, causing my mother to chuckle.
That's true. Let's focus on eating since you are here.
My father said, not allowing me to leave my seat, forcing me to continue eating tasteless high-end sushi.
I'll be taking over as the head of this sales department, starting today. My name is Diana Johnson. With me here, I assure you we can turn the performance around. Just make sure to follow my instructions.
Today, a woman named Diana Johnson, who is about 10 years older than me, has been assigned here from the New York headquarters. Our company, primarily a supermarket, wholesales machinery for processing meat and other foods. Although a subsidiary, our company is large, with the New York headquarters, a branch in Chicago, and where I work, the equivalent to the Houston branch. Recently, our branch's performance has been declining, so we were informed that a competent person would be sent from headquarters. I had hoped for someone decent to arrive, but the initial greetings from the new arrivals stirred anxiety among everyone. And it wasn't just Diana who had been assigned.
I'm Merica Glover, and like Diana, I'll be serving as the section chief in the sales department, starting today. Please look forward to working with me.
Standing next to Diana, she appeared considerably younger than me. Her greeting was standard, but her facial muscles barely moved. She seemed almost android-like.
She is a very capable person. Originally, I was supposed to come here alone, but I insisted she join me. Make sure to follow her instructions as well as mine.
Diana declared, running the show from the first day. She had young employees fetch her coffee whenever it ran out and called the person responsible for each difficult negotiation to explain themselves in front of everyone. Erica was somewhat better, but she had her issues too.
These numbers are in full width characters, not half width. Please resubmit.
Her nitpicking meant that reports that used to be submitted smoothly were now often returned, hindering work progress.
Isn't there anyone competent here? It's frustrating how much we have to carry the load.
In just one day, my workplace, which was supposed to be my sanctuary, turned into something as oppressive as my family home. A month after Diana's arrival, everyone was exhausted. The younger employees, in particular, were making mistakes out of fear of what could happen if they didn't secure contracts, often losing deals that were near completion. During a break, a colleague half-jokingly wondered aloud if someone collapsing would finally make the headquarters realize the true nature of these two, but it was a real possibility. I decided to offer myself up. Diana, at this rate, someone might collapse. I understand the need to improve performance, but could you reconsider your approach?
And what if they do collapse?
Her question caught me off guard, and I was unable to respond.
In sales, numbers are everything. If someone collapses, it means they weren't cut out for this.
Diana's response was calm. It's the tone of someone who thinks anyone not as excellent as my father doesn't matter. There are various types of people in the world. As a supervisor, it's your job to identify the best way to teach each individual and nurture them. If someone collapses, it means you have failed in your duty, making you the one who is not competent. Choosing words that I hoped would provoke her, Johnson reacted as expected, scattering documents across the floor in anger.
I was chosen for this position because I am competent. Those who are not should grovel and pick up these papers.
I collected the papers while being looked down upon by her. I didn't feel humiliated, thanks to my upbringing. Thinking I couldn't possibly refer to Erica as an android, she knelt beside me to help. I was completely unaware, so I was surprised and let out a strange voice.
I'll assist.
You are kind. See, hurry up and pick them up.
Maybe Erica was inherently kind, and I regretted thinking of her as an android.
I just need to check some of these documents immediately.
She looked at me directly.
Your unnecessary remarks have wasted our time. Please reflect on this.
Even Diana seemed taken aback, unable to sit down with the documents Erica handed her. Though it was an unexpected turn of events, focusing Diana's bullying on me did succeed in reducing the burden on other employees. Feeling relieved, a junior colleague approached me with a pale face.
What should I do?
Erica was right next to us, and though I hesitated, it seemed there was no time to move elsewhere, so I listened there.
We've received a call saying the machinery we delivered was wrong. I've also made a mistake in the estimate, so they're quite upset with me.
I had anticipated that mistakes would be induced by Diana's management style. I tried to hand him an open can of coffee in consolation, but missed.
Did you just hang up? How angry were they? Please tell me more.
Erica pressed him, and he looked like he was about to cry. Please, let's leave it at that. I'll handle the rest.
No, this is what supervisors are for. I will take care of it.
She quickly checked the client's information stored in the system and made a call. At first, there were shouts of anger, but gradually, They turned into laughter.
This should resolve the issue. We'll deliver what was originally supposed to be sent out sooner than usual, so please help, Sean. You're dismissed now.
The junior deeply bowed to her. Perhaps she wasn't a bad person after all, just different. I was relieved that the situation had been resolved, but the story didn't end there. When the documents were recreated, with my name on them, Diana, mistaking me for the person in charge, called me in.
Making such a basic mistake? Really? How long do you think you've been with the company? You're not a new employee.
Erica might have intervened if she were here, but unfortunately, she was out apologizing to the client for the delivery mistake along with the junior. I'm terribly sorry. I'll be more careful in the future.
There won't be a next time.
Johnson smirked and pointed to her computer.
There's a template for a resignation letter in the shared folder, in case you don't know how to write one.
If I didn't try it, the junior would likely be next. Without hesitation, I downloaded the resignation letter and submitted it to Johnson before the two returned. Leaving a place I had finally found was sad, but I had no regrets. Now, I could truly get away from my father. I even thought I should have done this sooner. A week after resigning, thinking I wouldn't be found out so soon, I was called by my father. I might be told to work for him this time. With a heavy heart, I headed to the sushi restaurant run by the chef who had visited our house the other day. In the private room I was led to, there were my father and, surprisingly, Erica. "Why are you here?" Upon revealing her true identity, I was astonished.
That's the situation. I'm counting on you.
Despite not being the type of conversation to have while eating, my father didn't stop eating his sushi.
You should start eating too, Sean. The nicey one will be here soon.
Can I go to the bathroom now?
Go ahead.
Thinking it was going to be a long conversation, I almost bumped into a woman on my way back from the bathroom. Sorry.
No, my apologies. Oh, you must be Sean.
It was Diana.
What a coincidence. I'm here to have a meal with Erica today.
Unaware of everything, Diana was in a good mood, looking forward to enjoying high-end sushi. Do you always go to places like this with Erica?
Now that you mention it, it's our first time at a sushi place. More importantly, are you okay? Can you afford it? This place is quite expensive.
The chef at the counter looked at us curiously. What is this woman talking about? Seemed to be written all over his face. Thank you for your concern. My father will be covering the bill, so it's all good.
I couldn't bear the thought of having my dad treat me to sushi at this age.
Being able to dish out such backhanded comments so effortlessly was impressive in a way. It really was going to be a long day. May I go say hello to Erica?
Sure, she's in the furthest private room. I'll show you inside. It's supposed to be a room reserved for special guests only.
Why wasn't Diana curious about how Erica managed to make a reservation? Walking down the corridor with Diana, who had no idea who was waiting in the private room, I smiled despite myself.
By the way, why are you wearing a suit if you've quit your job? Oh, right, your job hunting must be tough.
I hadn't thought about getting back at her, but for everyone's sake, I faced her with a winning smile. I've just been appointed as the new president, Diana. I've been under your care as a subordinate, but from now on, I'll be dealing with you strictly as your superior. As we talked, I slowly opened the sliding door to the private room.
Wow, what are you talking about? Have you become so unable to find a job that you've started living in a fantasy?
It's not a delusion. You should really take a good look at the reality in front of you.
Erica interjected, leaving Diana looking utterly baffled. Given that Diana had always favored her as a junior, her confusion was understandable.
The man standing next to me is the president of our parent company, and Sean here is his son.
Sean is the president's son. That's impossible.
And why would I lie about that? Do you think I have any reason to benefit from such a lie?
It was clear that deceiving people for pleasure wasn't in her nature. Diana seemed to come to the same conclusion and calmed down. By the way, this Erica is my father's secretary.
Erica is the secretary. What's going on?
I was just as confused as her when I heard the entire story. My father had grown suspicious when he learned that over 10 people had resigned from a subsidiary's sales department in a single month without any clear reason or accountability. Especially since Diana hadn't been demoted or transferred despite the rumors reaching even the president of the parent company. To prevent any future trouble, he sent Erica to investigate.
Being seconded from the parent company to a subsidiary and then being assigned to Houston branch. Did I do something wrong?
Erica, it turns out, was an excellent secretary, so much so that my father felt indebted to her. Finally, my father spoke up.
To think that you were dating the president of that company and had everything swept under the rug. In today's world, your treatment of your subordinates could easily become a scandalous article. It wouldn't be strange for it to affect our parent company.
I was just trying to educate my subordinates for their own good.
The idea of her claiming to educate anyone was unacceptable to me. Education, what you did was discard anyone who couldn't achieve the outcomes you envisioned. Don't ever use the word education again. Well, you and your boyfriend will be demoted, so it's unlikely you'll have subordinates to manage anyway. She must have been really frustrated to be confronted so boldly by me. Or perhaps thinking she was going to be demoted anyway, she didn't care anymore and revealed her true nature in front of the president of the parent company.
Must be nice being the president's son, getting special treatment. Until recently, you couldn't even become a chief, and now you're suddenly the president of a subsidiary.
If this had been said to the old me, I would have despaired, feeling trapped by my father's shadow forever. But now, it is different. I was filled with confidence. I won't deny the special treatment, but I've been observing the company as an ordinary employee. I believe I understand better than anyone what everyone is looking for.
So what? You've always just followed orders from those above you, never achieving significant sales results. How could someone like you possibly be suitable to be a president?
Erica stopped me from responding.
Sean is the right person to be president. You may not know, but whenever Junior couldn't meet their goals, Sean would give up his own projects close to contract to help them, advising on how they could achieve their targets. Since he was giving away his projects, it's natural his own performance would appear lower. Plus, having observed his work, his processing speed is exceptionally fast.
She explained to Diana, just as she had to me.
Sean has always underestimated his abilities, leading to his talents not being fully recognized. In reality, he is very capable.
She had made the same case to my father when reporting on Diana. It led him to reconsider his view of me as inferior to my accomplished elder brother. As a result, I was appointed the new president. The notion of being president seemed impossible at first, but being praised by Erica, who I knew wouldn't just flatter me, made it feel within reach.
Diana, there's something else we need to discuss.
What now?
Diana looked at Erica with a mix of pity and disbelief.
Houston branch's performance hasn't actually been declining. A major supermarket client went bankrupt, reducing revenue, but the number of new contracts has actually increased from last year.
Then why was I sent to Houston?
As she spoke, she seemed to realize the truth. She began to make a call, likely to her boyfriend.
Your boyfriend abandoned you. He sensed the parent company's investigation and got rid of you under the pretext of fixing the Tokyo headquarters sales department.
There was no response on the phone. Diana had been utterly discarded.
You said you've been too busy to contact him since arriving in Houston. You should have realized something was wrong then.
Diana, her face turning pale, stormed out of the restaurant. There's a showdown waiting at the Tokyo headquarters, but that's none of my concern now. I gulped down my now cold tea in one go. The environment has changed so dramatically in the past few hours that my brain can't keep up. Then, my father adds another shock.
Sean, I'm sorry for not really seeing you until now.
He left without waiting for my response. Being acknowledged by my father is a first in my memory. Already at my limit, I couldn't hold back any longer. Tears start flowing one after another.
Let's take it a little easy.
Thinking she's offering to stay until I stop crying, I say thank you only to be met with a puzzled look.
The president left quite a bit of money, and since we both have been troubled by that man, let's recuperate some of it.
Watching her order the most expensive items as if to make a point, my tears stopped, and I found myself laughing before I knew it. Later, the board and I decided to dismiss the president. Diana ended up working as a regular employee at Houston branch. My well-educated juniors in the sales department are reportedly taking good care of her education, whether it's from the humiliation or the shock of being abandoned by her boyfriend. I heard she's become a shadow of her former beautiful self.
It's been about a month since Diana was demoted.
Upon hearing Erica's words, I truly realized how quickly time flies. I became president shortly thereafter. To help with my likely anxieties, my father made her my secretary. I always knew she was capable in the sales department, but her skills as a secretary are exceptionally high, preparing things in advance and greatly assisting me. Yeah, it's already been a month. She seemed unable to hide her irritation at my heartfelt muttering.
I didn't mean to get nostalgic about the president. I was thinking we should check if Johnson hasn't caused any problems lately.
Oh, right. When would be a good time?
Let's do it next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday is my brother's birthday. I hold back a retort, knowing it would come back to me tenfold. My brother liked Erica and had been quite forward with her. When she was appointed as my secretary, his frustrated expression was a bit of revenge for me. As she and I spent time together, our relationship evolved. I had thought she never showed her emotions, but as we grew closer, she began to share more of her expressive side. During the challenging times right after I became president, she supported me, and before I knew it, I had fallen for her. Realizing I had fallen for the same person, as my brother made me laugh. I offer Erica a box of chocolates from a shop I like.
What's this all of a sudden? You didn't do something wrong, did you?
She takes the bag of chocolates warily but with care. Her caution is warranted. Turns out I ended up like my brother. I'm giving this to you with that in mind, so if it bothers you, just say so. We can go back to just being president and secretary. It's not a bother, she replied, placing the bag gently on her desk.
Make sure to check the documents and then summarize them in a report.
What is this?
After working for decades, can you even do a simple document check?
Really? Just because he's the manager, why does he feel the need to talk down to everyone? There's something to be said for professionalism. No, even basic human decency. To think he made it to become a manager without being able to use formal language.
If you've got it, make sure it's done by today.
No, as I said before, I have other things I need to do.
That doesn't matter. If you can follow my orders, I'll have to fire you.
Fired? Does he really think I'll just do as he says? It's not like I'm rebelling just because he's younger. If it were truly necessary work, I'd take it on without complaint. But the documents he handed me were from the back shelf. And they're from 5 years ago. Why summarize documents for a company we've already ceased dealing with? It was a waste of time, and I had no intention of playing along with this farce.
Hey, did you get those documents summarized? You promised to submit them yesterday. Why haven't I seen them yet? Do you need to be told to do everything?
I haven't done anything with the documents. As I said yesterday, I have no intention of wasting my time.
So you're saying you can follow the orders of your manager?
If you're going to wield your power as the manager like that, then please do the job of a manager properly. Is assigning meaningless tasks something you think a manager should be doing? I made my stance clear. Then,
Oh, if you're going to speak to me like that, I'll show you what a manager's job is. We don't need old-timers like you. You're fired.
My name is John. I'm currently 63 years old. I'm still working, but now work is all I have left. I had a wife who was of the same age, but lost her in a car accident 20 years ago. Since we had no children, I've been alone ever since. But working kept me motivated and needed by the company and its president. 45 years ago, just after graduating high school, I was living by doing part-time jobs. Welcome, just you today.
Actually, I'm expecting 3 team members. Could we get a table?
Certainly. I was working part-time at a steakhouse. The pay wasn't great, but the owner was a really nice guy, so I enjoyed my life. This shop was quite established, with 80% regular customers. Thanks to those regulars, the business was sustainable. But one day, the owner called me over.
I'm sorry to spring this on you suddenly, but I'm thinking of closing the shop at the end of this year.
What?
The customers have been dwindling year by year, and I'm reaching my physical limits. I'm sorry, but you'll need to look for a new job.
I was honestly taken aback by this sudden news from the owner. Sure, I knew the shop would close eventually since he hadn't taken any apprentices. But I hadn't expected it to come this soon. I had never thought about the future, couldn't even imagine doing anything other than working there. I knew the day would come, but the owner gave me a 6-month notice. From that day, I started looking for a job, but it wasn't going well.
Today I'm alone, so I'll take the counter seat, please.
Understood. That day, a regular customer, a company president, came in and I seated him at the counter. As usual, I served water and a towel, then let him enjoy his steak. It was the same service as always.
Can't find a job.
What?
I heard from the owner about closing the shop. You'll be out of a job, right?
Yay, that's right. With just a high school diploma and no real skills, it's been tough finding someone willing to hire me.
How about joining us then, as a part-timer? If you show good results, I'll make it a full-time position.
I doubted my ears for a moment. Was this person serious? He's talking about hiring me with no skills and just a high school education? That seemed like a risk. But are you sure about me?
The owner has been taking care of me for a long time. He consulted me about you. I can just stand by and do nothing, right?
The owner had gone to the back to get some ingredients and wasn't there, but to think he was this concerned about me? The owner did.
I believe in the importance of connections between people. I became good friends with you here, which must be fate. I want to extend a helping hand to a young person who is willing to try hard. When I started my company, the owner helped me out with a lot of advice, and I knew it would come back around someday.
The president's words resonated with me. Connections between people. The owner was good to the president, so the president was good to me. Is that how the chain reaction works? I naturally accepted it and decided not to waste the opportunity the president had given me. After that, I started working at the president's company as soon as the owner's shop closed. Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you.
It'll be different from working at the steakhouse, but do your best, okay?
I'll do my best to meet your expectations. The president trusted me, and I worked hard to live up to that trust. Of course, I had never done sales before, so at first, I really struggled to get results. But thanks to the training provided by my colleague and the support from my owner, I quickly grew as a salesperson and was able to produce decent results a year after starting. After that, I created new sales opportunities and used those connections to secure more and more contracts. President, it's just a 3-month contract for now, but I managed to secure a deal with Smith Industries.
Really?
They said they'd consider future dealings based on our performance over these 3 months, so let's keep up the good work. I studied hard while working on how to secure contracts and gain trust, and with each experience, I came to understand various things. Thanks to that, I was able to secure some significant contracts for the company, and I truly enjoyed my work. Then, one day when I was 30, the president called me in.
Sorry for calling you in suddenly. I wanted to talk to you about a promotion.
A promotion?
You've performed beyond my expectations. and I see you as a necessary asset for our company's future. So, I was thinking, how about taking on a managerial position? Having someone with your track record in charge could help the company grow.
A managerial position. I was genuinely pleased with the offer of a promotion and would have accepted it immediately under normal circumstances. However, I still wanted to work on the front lines. I considered my job in sales to be my true calling. I pride myself on my communication skills and my ability to win trust and secure contracts more than anyone else. That's why I wanted to work where I could fully utilize those skills. Thank you. Being offered a promotion is truly an honor, but I want to continue working in sales for this company. Also, after observing my colleagues and owners, I don't think I'm cut out for managing people.
I see. If that's how you feel, how about a raise instead? Anyway, I'm happy as long as you're willing to work for the company. Let's keep up the good work.
Of course. I owed a lot to the president for helping me, and I had always intended to work my hardest for the company. Of course, the fact that he offered me a promotion meant he recognized my efforts. That shows I've made an impact, and I was happy just to have that conversation. And I plan to continue producing results and contributing to the president and the company. After all, I was picked up by the president. I was determined to repay that favor over a lifetime. That was my feeling. And so, I continued to deliver results, and before I knew it, 10, 20, 30 years had passed. In that time, I got married, and 20 years ago, I lost my wife in an accident. Throughout the tough times in my life, I was always helped by those around me, and somehow I managed to keep going without losing sight of my life. Even at this age, some might find me odd, not having been promoted and still working as a regular sales employee, but I enjoyed my work and wanted to repay the favor in my own way. Then one day,
I've been appointed as the new manager starting today, so I'm counting on everyone. The overall sales performance has been declining, so I'm here to make some reforms.
The previous manager had retired, and a new one in his 30s had been brought in. He had worked at a company known to the president, and his capabilities were well regarded. But from day one, he declared significant reforms.
First off, there are too many employees in the sales department. We'll be trimming the unnecessary force. Of course, those who haven't been performing are included, but the primary target will be the older employees with no future here, so just be prepared.
Our workforce was relatively young, but it's true there were salespeople in their 40s and 50s. Maybe he was referring to me, now in my 60s. I had that thought, but there was no use worrying about every little thing. Besides, I had a major task ahead of me. For that reason, I didn't have the time to seriously listen to this young manager's talk. That's what I thought, but...
Hey, what are you doing?
What? I'm preparing for the next negotiation.
Do you not realize that's pointless? Didn't you listen to what I said earlier? Or is your hearing so bad you didn't hear it?
If I stay silent, he just goes on. But getting angry at someone more than 2 decades younger isn't worth it. What I need to focus on isn't getting upset, but producing results through my work. I plan to deliver results on the project I'm working on until retirement. That's what I had decided. I have things to do. Is that all right with you?
That's what I'm saying. You don't have any work to do. What job can an old person do? Seriously? Can't you even understand that?
Huh? Sure, I'm nearing retirement, but what does he know about me? That's the problem with young people these days. Yet, it's something I don't want to say. That's exactly what an old person would say. Still, I don't want to be criticized by people not understanding what work I do or the achievements I've contributed to this company for things they know nothing about. Don't worry, I won't be a burden. I'll just do my job.
This is why I hate stubborn old people. Staying as a regular employee without being promoted until this age speaks for itself, doesn't it?
What?
You're still a regular employee because you can't do the job, right?
So that's the misunderstanding. To someone who knows nothing, I might indeed seem like a regular employee who couldn't get promoted, a useless one at that. It wouldn't be surprising if he thought that way. The company can't fire me even if they wanted to because of lifetime employment. That's probably what he thinks. However, there's probably no one in the company who thinks that way except for this manager. If he understood what kind of work I do, maybe his attitude towards me would change. That's what I thought. However,
well, if you really want to work that badly, I'll give you something to do. Here, check these documents and summarize them in a report.
What is this?
After decades of work, you can even do a document check.
It's not that. Why do I have to do document checking? I thought this kind of work was done by the administrative staff.
Are you trying to go against me, the manager? You've got some nerve. Or do you think you're better just because you're older?
Really? Just because he's the manager, why does he feel entitled to talk down to me like that? Indeed, hierarchical relationships are necessary. But before that comes professional manners. No, even basic human decency. Can he understand something so simple? It's surprising he made it to become a manager without being able to use even formal language.
If you've got it, finish it by today.
No, like I said before, I have things I need to do.
That doesn't matter. If you can follow my orders, I'll have to fire you.
Fired? Fired? Did he really think I would just comply? Of course, I'm not resisting because he's younger. If it were truly necessary work, I would take it on without complaint. But the documents he handed me were from the back shelf. And they're from 5 years ago. Why summarize documents for a company we've already ceased dealing with? It was a waste of time, and I had no intention of playing along with this farce.
Just get to work already.
He left after saying that, but I had more important work to do. I needed to prepare for negotiations and didn't want to waste time on such trivial matters. Fortunately, my desk is out of the manager's sight, and I spent the day working on my own tasks. The next day,
Hey, did you get those documents summarized? You promised to submit them yesterday. Why haven't I seen them yet? Do you need to be told to do everything?
I haven't done anything with the documents. As I said yesterday, I have no intention of wasting my time.
So you're saying you can follow the orders of your manager?
If you're going to wield your power as the manager like that, then please do the job of a manager properly. Is assigning meaningless tasks something you think a manager should be doing? Knowing his personality, I was aware that saying this would only make him angry. But staying silent would only escalate things further, and I have no intention of wasting my precious time until retirement on such trivialities. However, my words seemed to have ignited his fury completely. He lost all composure, his face turned red, and he shouted at me.
Oh, if you're going to say that, then you can go. Then I'll show you what a manager's job is. We don't need old-timers like you. You're fired.
Are you making decisions based on your emotions? Isn't that the last thing someone in a managerial position should do?
You disobeyed your superior, so it's only natural, right? As a manager, I have a right to fire you. Pack your things and leave today.
I hadn't expected him to go this far in his anger. But he seemed serious. What a problem. I've never dealt with someone like this before. But I understood his personality then. Continuing to argue logically with him was pointless. If you insist, I'll leave immediately. What about the handover?
Your work is trivial and unnecessary. No one needs it, so there's nothing to hand over. What are you even talking about?
That's my line. What was he talking about? I wish he would stop being so selfish. Was that also an order from the manager? Since he said there was no need for a handover, then I won't do anything. So, you're saying there's no need for a handover?
Of course. It's better for us if an old-timer like you disappears quickly.
Understood? Since that's what he wanted, I left as he wished. But whatever happens next is not my concern. I was fired by the manager. It's up to him to fill the gap I leave. Understood. In that case, I'll leave the succession and everything else in your hands. With that, I'll take my leave.
Leave. Someone like you is better off quietly enjoying retirement at home.
I couldn't help but be amazed at the manager looking down on me until the very end, but that's just his character. People like him don't change because you say something. It's a waste of time and effort to even try. So I'll just do as he says. As he put it, I'm just a regular employee. And I got fired for defying the manager. That's all there is to it. However, I wonder if the other employees realize how bad it is for me to be leaving in this manner. Before I could leave the company, I was stopped.
Are you really going to leave?
I got fired, so I have to. But it seems the new manager will take care of everything, so don't worry.
But
if you ever have any trouble with work, feel free to reach out to me. You can always contact me. I said this and left, but my colleague looked quite anxious. It's understandable. But my place is no longer at the company. So it can't be helped. I thought of it as an early retirement as I reached home. I need to say goodbye to the president too, but I decided to wait and see. I just couldn't believe that this was the end of it. A week later.
Hey, who's handling this $1 billion deal?
that would be John. Have you forgotten? You fired him last week because he was old.
What? He was in charge of such an important deal. No wonder the performance wasn't improving. It's all because the old folks were covering for each other.
Even after I was gone, it seemed the manager had been bad-mouthing me, but I couldn't care less. What he thinks of me doesn't matter anymore. Let him say what he wants. However, I had been waiting quietly for a week. I knew exactly what would happen because I was in charge of that deal.
So, what are you going to do?
Don't worry, I'll handle it myself.
Apparently, the manager went to meet with my former client. There was a scheduled negotiation that day. Of course, since he said he would take over everything, I left all the documents with him. But whether he could handle the negotiation was questionable.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, isn't John coming today?
Yes, I am Bob Tyler, the new manager. He retired last week, so I'll be taking over.
The moment he said that, the faces of our clients tensed. They must have been wondering why I didn't show up. They must have been quite surprised. Naturally, you'd properly say goodbye to your clients before leaving. I had built a strong relationship with them, so they were likely shocked by the lack of communication from me.
Hello.
Thank you for calling.
I'm sorry to call suddenly. I heard you retired. Is that true?
The client stepped out and then contacted me. They must have never imagined I would leave my job without any notice. Rather than saying I retired, it's more accurate to say I was fired.
Fired?
The new manager who's there with you, he decided to start firing older employees. I explained everything the manager had said to me. The client was quite surprised but listened to my story to the end and understood. In this day and age, it's unheard of for someone to be fired in such a manner, so they must have been bewildered. But the fact that they believed me without any doubt shows how much trust I had earned from them.
So that's the situation. Understood. We'll start the negotiation now, and I'll get back to you later.
I'm truly sorry for ending things this way. It was irresponsible of me, and I apologize.
No need to apologize. It's not your fault. But rest assured, we'll make sure he takes full responsibility.
The client said this and then hung up. I could somewhat predict what would befall that manager after this, but it seemed things turned out far worse than I had imagined.
Could you please leave now?
Excuse me. I thought we were here to discuss the renewal of our contract. Is there a problem with the documents?
That's why I'm asking you to leave. We had you come today to discuss the renewal, but we have no intention of renewing our contract. Dismissing people unjustly and creating a workplace as you please is a clear abuse of power. We cannot do business with a company that allows such people.
The moment the client said this, the manager was at a loss for words. He might not have understood exactly what was happening, but he must have understood the client knew he was abusing his power. The manager must have been struggled then to be confronted with such accusations by a client he thought knew nothing. How did you know about this? And if we don't renew the contract, it will be my responsibility. I imagine the manager was swamped with various anxieties, but this was just the beginning.
Given my long-standing relationship with your company's president, I'll ensure your case is thoroughly reviewed. The position of a division head in a large corporation is significant, after all. If the top fails, everything below crumbles.
Please wait. What exactly are you talking about? I don't understand. And if we don't renew the contract, I'll be in trouble. Please.
We would have considered renewing the contract if someone like you hadn't shown up. But we can't trust you. Business is built on trust. We had trust in the person who was handling our account before, not you. Perhaps if another salesperson had come, we might have considered it, but we can't trust someone who makes unjust dismissals.
Hearing the words unjust dismissal repeatedly, the manager must have finally understood his situation. It was revealed that he had unjustly dismissed me. And from the client's words, it was clear how much trust I had garnered and how much I had contributed to the company. And then, he probably understood just how much of a positive impact I could have had on the company if I were still there.
Please wait. I never thought you and he had such a relationship. The company's performance was declining. I thought the only option was to downsize the workforce with no future.
You tried to reduce expenses for the company's sake, so it wasn't for personal gain or out of emotion. but purely for the company's benefit.
Of course, I wouldn't do something like that for personal reasons. That would be an abuse of power. I believe I understand my role as a manager.
The manager might have seen this as a way out of the dire situation. From the brink of hell, a fragile thread dangled down. That's the situation, I believe. He was determined to cling to that thread and escape hell at all costs. With that mindset, the manager frantically continued making excuses, unaware that those very excuses were tightening the noose around his own neck.
So, let me ask you one question. Who do you think is the least necessary person for the company in the current situation?
The least necessary person? That would be those who haven't produced results, I guess.
Not producing results doesn't mean there's no potential. New employees can't produce results immediately, and nurturing them is the job of the company and management.
A wrong answer could sever the thread to escape from hell. The manager scrambled to find the answer the client wanted. But there is no way the manager can answer such a question.
Cutting the upper management's salaries. Would that be the best answer?
A business is about money, and those who work primarily for money won't put in their best effort without compensation, especially not the upper management whose responsibilities and workload only increase.
Then,
it's not about those who don't produce results, but about eliminating negative elements like you. Removing the negatives naturally improves the company. Don't you think so? That's what you said and thought you did, right? Removing the least necessary people is truly the best approach.
Confronted by the client's words, the manager was shocked. He hadn't expected to be criticized like this. Promoted to become a manager at a young age, he must have felt quite pleased with himself. But merely stepping on others doesn't make one a competent manager. I continued working in sales until this age precisely because I was trusted with the company's most significant deals. Though I say it was entrusted to me, I was the one who got the deal sealed. Someone who fires someone else just for being old, without understanding the value of experience, isn't fit to be a manager. Being unfit for the role means getting paid as a manager is a waste. New employees or those with lesser skills aren't expected to carry such heavy responsibilities. However, if one earns a high salary and bears the title of manager, they must be stripped of their position if they fail to fulfill their duties.
You get what I'm saying, right? Since you tried to do the same thing, now that you're on the receiving end, you can say you don't understand, right?
No, that's not.
Got any excuses? I'm wrong.
It's not that, but.
Then you know what to do, right? What should be done for the company's sake.
The manager likely didn't expect such confrontation. He turned pale and fell silent. But it was the manager himself who clearly stated that unnecessary people for the company should be fired. Then, it's imperative to see that executed. If the manager was then considered the most unnecessary within the company, and if his own statements hold true, then he should be the one to resign.
But I have a family.
Weren't you acting for the company's sake? Are you going to bring personal issues into this? Or are you going to admit that firing John was for personal reasons and not for the company's benefit?
I thought old people were useless. I'm really sorry.
The manager finally admitted his wrongdoing. My dismissal was unjust. While anyone could see this, the admission that mattered most needed to come from him.
All right, I'll report this to the president. Take care.
No, please.
That's all from me.
The client then dismissed the manager. According to the president, the client called later to relay everything. Consequently, the president decided to demote the manager. Upon hearing this, the manager was outraged, but the president detailed my hiring and efforts. The president believed in the manager and hired him, feeling pity for him after losing his job due to his acquaintance's company going bankrupt. The president had given the manager a chance out of sympathy, seeing a bit of me in him. However, focused only on results, the manager faced demotion due to his anger. It was his own doing. It couldn't be helped. I appreciated the president's opportunity and worked hard to repay that kindness. The manager took his position for granted. By then, the outcome was already decided. Later, the president contacted me, and I was able to return to the company. Busy since my return, I've committed to fulfilling my duties. The connections between people can sometimes greatly influence one's life. That's why it's crucial to value those connections, or life may take a turn for the worse. To prevent that, I want to live my life, never forgetting the kindness shown to me.
I ended up being late to the crucial CEO inauguration party because I took a woman in a wheelchair who had fallen and injured herself to the hospital.
Helped a woman in a wheelchair. You could have just called an ambulance and headed to the venue. If someone prioritizes society's trash over their work, they'll get fired.
Ken, the CEO, put his arm around my shoulder and said to Ben, the other company CEO, who was about to invest $150 million in our company, laughing, "Firing those who don't work is the right call, isn't it? Paying salary to such useless employees is just foolish. Just a loudmouth with no substance. Really a useless employee." At that moment, that woman in the wheelchair appeared,
calling me society's trash.
Nancy.
The moment I heard that name, I was shocked, remembering what Jesse, Ken's secretary, had told me. I couldn't believe that my actions, which had caused me to be late, would turn into Ken's nightmare. My name is John Aaron. I work at Row Inc., Recycling of Happiness Inc., collecting clothes worn by children in the U.S. and toys they no longer use, and donating them to children around the world. I was a member of the photography club during my school days. Wanting to learn about printing, I got a job at a small printing company after graduating from high school. The company mainly took orders online, as home printers and local print shops were still the norm back then. Because of this, there were only 5 employees in our cramped office filled with machines. 5 years had passed since I joined the company. With the spread of smartphones, people of all ages started ordering photo prints online, and the revenue of the printing company I worked for increased significantly. 2 years later, the number of employees exceeded 100, and we expanded our services to include fan merchandise prints and novelty goods for companies. During this time, I fell in love at first sight with a photographer named Kate at an art fair, and we started dating. 6 months later, she got pregnant, and we had a shotgun wedding. Having been an only child, I was quite anxious about having children, but my daughter turned out to be an angel, and we spent our weekends searching for various family events to attend. One Sunday, my wife suggested we attend a sustainable event. While she was busy looking at goods, I walked around with my daughter in my arms. My 2-year-old daughter showed interest in the rowing booth, which displayed sustainable toys and recycled clothing. Reading a pamphlet that contained information about poor children around the world, I was touched by the wonderful slogan, "Connecting dreams from children in the U.S. to children around the world with goods." Since the event was open until late, I gathered my daughter's unused clothes and went back to the row booth to donate them. It was just before the event closed. Afterward, I felt a strong desire to do more for underprivileged children, so I left the printing company where I had worked for 10 years and joined Rowing. David, the president of Rowing, was a person I deeply respected. Despite being the president, he would participate in the planning department meetings I was part of, offering his opinions and even coming up with ideas himself. The company attracted kind people. The atmosphere was so positive that, even in the planning department, we built relationships based on mutual respect rather than rivalry. I truly believed it was my calling. Just when I was getting accustomed to the job, all employees were suddenly gathered and announced by David, "I'm sorry for the sudden notice, but I've decided to volunteer in Africa and start a new venture." Everyone was speechless at such an unexpected turn of events.
Ken, the vice president, will become the new president of Rowing.
Perhaps knowing that the employees would try to stop him if he informed them earlier, David quickly finished his farewell and flew to Africa. While still unable to grasp the situation, I was called by the new president, Ken Coleman, led by the secretary, Jesse, to the CEO's office. I found Ken deeply seated on a sofa in a room filled with the smell of cigarette. It was hard to believe it was the same room where David used to be, enveloped in a haze of cigarette smoke, like stepping into a different space altogether.
This weekend, we're having my inauguration party, and I want the planning department to prepare it.
But we've never done something like this before, and we don't know how to arrange it. Ken frowned and glared at me. My legs froze in fear, as if I was in the presence of a mobster. "I'm sorry. Please let me do it."
Should have said that from the start. What a pain.
Ken called out to Jesse, "Hey." Jesse, now 32, is highly competent. I've heard she's been supporting David since she joined the company as a fresh graduate.
Book the venue today and call the media too. I want my inauguration party to spread across the internet news.
Jesse replied with an awkward smile. Ken's overwhelming attitude made me wonder, did David really leave this man in charge?
John, plan a new project and prepare the documentation by Thursday. We're announcing it to the media, so make it something catchy and innovative.
Thursday, but today's Monday. That's impossible, especially with the party preparations.
What?
Ken's what was the most intimidating and frightening thing I'd ever been told in my life, making me fear I might be fired if I said anything more negative. I shared only the party details with my department, deciding to proceed alone so as not to burden them with the new project. On Wednesday, after pulling an all-nighter to finish the project proposal, I headed to the CEO's office. As usual, the room was filled with the suffocating smell of cigarette, and Jesse looked uncomfortable. I placed the documents in front of Ken and began the presentation. Just at the moment, I began explaining the project of collaborating with a children's book author to create books that easily teach the importance of sustainable practices to children in kindergartens and elementary schools in the U.S. Ken threw the documents on the floor.
This isn't innovative at all. Do it over.
He dismissed the plan without even looking at a page.
Honestly, I don't care about helping kids. Think about what brings in profit for the company.
His statement was shocking. Is this what the president of Row Inc. should be saying? The thought of continuing to work under such a person filled me with despair. As I ate the lunch my wife made, feeling anxious, Jessie sat beside me.
I'm sorry.
Jessie apologized with a look of guilt. Why are you apologizing?
Ken is the worst. I regret not convincing the former president, David, more strongly.
But why was Ken chosen? I don't understand, since I've never worked with him before. Checking no one was around, Jessie began to whisper.
Actually, Ken is the husband of David's younger sister, Nancy. She had to quit her job due to a severe illness at a young age.
It was the first time I heard about David's personal life. Ken apparently struggled with gambling and money.
David hired him, hoping work at Row Inc. would help him straighten out, offering support and a salary.
That's admirable. But to make such a person president.
In recent years, he pretended to be very diligent and enthusiastic about work in front of the president.
So that was it. So, David must have let his guard down because they were family.
At a dinner, Ken passionately spoke about wanting Nancy to receive better treatment and live longer, convincing David, who was thinking of expanding overseas, to entrust rowing to him.
Jessie sighed deeply. Her usual upright posture slumped. With David gone, Ken was already doing as he pleased. The betrayal of kindness was unforgivable, and I worried about the company's future. The day before the CEO's inauguration party, it was Thursday, I took the revised documents and went back to the CEO's office again. Different languages, cultures, and backgrounds, but one thing children have in common is memories with family and friends. Every child has someone important and memories they don't want to forget. My heart was pounding. It felt like my heart was about to jump out of my body. It's a collaboration with photography. We go to countries with impoverished children where photographers take and print their photos as gifts. Suppressing a cough from the cigarette smell, I presented my thoroughly thought-out project. It is inspired by photos my wife took for work the previous night. We'll be using recycled paper for the prints. Clothes and toys might be thrown away as we grow up, but photos remain treasures for a lifetime.
That won't make any money. How are we supposed to generate revenue with this content? You're still as useless as ever, but I guess we'll go with it. Whether we actually do it or not isn't important, right? Give a presentation for it, will you?
I really wanted to shout, what's important is that we actually do it. But, exhausted from all the all-nighters, I was just relieved that I didn't have to redo the documents and left the CEO's office. On the day of the CEO's inauguration party, I practiced my presentation at the company until the last minute and headed to the venue. I called a cab using an app in time. As I waited for the taxi at the company's entrance, a woman in a wheelchair and a high school-aged boy on a skateboard collided right in front of me. Just as the sound of the wheelchair falling was heard, the taxi arrived. The woman couldn't get up by herself and sat on the ground. I would be late for the party if I didn't take the taxi now. Looking at the boy, his face was pale and he was flustered. When I looked back at the woman, I noticed she had injured her elbow and leg. Witnessing the entire scene, I thought I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't help her, so I lifted the woman into the taxi and joined her. Then, the startled boy helped to get the wheelchair into the taxi.
I'm so sorry. Please, I'll pay for the hospital expenses.
Don't worry about it. I'm just not used to going out in a wheelchair, so it's okay.
What a kind woman. In the taxi, I called my colleague, Sherry Garfield, who was preparing at the venue, and spoke about the new project for the first time. I could tell she was upset with me for not consulting her, but she agreed to give a presentation in my place. After sending the woman to the hospital, I rushed to the venue. On stage, Sherry was presenting my plan. After the presentation, the venue erupted in applause, which made me very happy. Then, Ken said with the microphone, this project was her idea. What a great subordinate. I felt bitter that my carefully thought out plan was credited to Sherry by a single comment from Ken, but I accepted it since being late to the important inauguration party was my responsibility. Then, a man raised his hand. It was Ben Hunt, the president of the printing company I used to work for.
I will provide $150 million in funding for this project. Let's make children around the world smile together.
The venue buzzed. Ken beamed with a smile, shook hands with Ben, and the media surrounded them, taking pictures. I stood frozen at the corner of the venue, overwhelmed by complex emotions and unable to sort out my feelings.
Wasn't this your project, John?
It was Ben. As I was lost in thought, Ben had approached me. I felt a mix of happiness to see Ben after such a long time and wonder at how he knew it was my idea. As if my pent-up frustrations were spilling out, I shared everything that had happened with Ben. But I really want to do this project.
If you are on the project team, I'm more than happy to invest. Work might be tough at times, but as long as you're acting for the benefit of others, good things will come back to you in different forms.
Ben's words cleared my frustrations, and I was reminded of my initial desire to make children around the world happy, no matter what. After the inauguration speech, everyone was enjoying conversations and meals. I approached Ken, who was happily talking with Ben, and apologized. Then, I explained why I was late for the presentation.
So, my inauguration party was just that trivial to you?
Not at all. I'm truly sorry.
Help the woman in the wheelchair. You could have just called an ambulance and headed to the venue. If someone prioritizes scum of society over their work, they'll get fired.
No, I promise I won't make such a mistake again. Just not firing, please. Ken put his arm around me and turned to Ben, laughing. A person who doesn't work is to be fired, right? Paying such a person is just silly. Always talking back to the boss, really a useless employee. Hearing those words, Ben left the venue without saying anything. I felt ashamed and worthless, having convinced my wife and received support from everyone at the printing company to change jobs for this opportunity, and now having to leave this company as well. Then, the woman in the wheelchair I had taken to the hospital appeared at the venue. Are you okay? In front of Ken, a woman in a wheelchair said, "Am I what you call the scum of society?"
Nancy.
The moment I heard the name Nancy, I remembered the story about Ken's wife that I had heard from the secretary, Jessie. I couldn't believe that this woman was Nancy. Nancy approached me and took out her wallet.
It seems it fell at the entrance of the hospital. When I looked inside, I found my husband's business card, so I thought he might be here. I'm glad you were.
Lately, since everyone uses smartphone payments, I hadn't even realized I'd lost my wallet. Thank you so much for going out of your way. Are you hurt? Nancy smiled and said, "No, I'm okay."
Nancy was the one you helped? I owe you my thanks.
Ken, contrary to his earlier demeanor, smiled at me and expressed his gratitude.
If you've saved my wife, that's a different story. I won't fire you as a thank you.
Ken spoke cheerfully with a drink in his hand, but Nancy didn't look convinced.
That's awful. You just called me the scum of society.
It wasn't about you. It's because he abandoned my important party and acted on his own.
Ken began to speak faster, and sweat was dripping from his forehead. It was the first time I'd seen him so desperate.
I came dressed up because I wanted to celebrate your important inauguration party today.
When I saw Nancy had fallen, I thought, she's wearing a really nice dress. Now it's clear that she had originally intended to attend.
But I fell over after bumping into a boy on a skateboard. I was injured and couldn't get up, so he came to help me.
Her arms and legs were bandaged. I remembered her words, "I'm not used to going out in a wheelchair."
Then you should have gone home.
The words Ken uttered were neither "thank you for coming" nor "are you okay," but something that deeply hurt her feelings.
It's because you're doing something you're not used to.
"Oh, please someone shut him up," I silently screamed, unable to say anything as I had arrived late.
I thought being the president meant you were trusted. I tolerated your attitude at home, thinking you were stressed because you were trying so hard. But
perhaps he was saying terrible things to Nancy, who was sick. Without changing her expression, Nancy picked up Ken's meal from the table.
What, you want to eat?
Nancy threw the plate at Ken with all her might. Pizza sauce stained Ken's shirt.
Hey, what are you doing?
I've had enough. I want a divorce.
A divorce declaration in front of so many people was unexpected. Nancy must have been under a lot of stress to make such a declaration in public.
What? You can live on your own. Don't get cocky. You've lived a life completely dependent on me. Just because of a little criticism, you're talking divorce.
Listening to his typical abusive husband remarks made my heart ache. What kind of life leads someone to say such things?
That's right. I'm ashamed to be dependent on someone like you. Of course, I'm grateful. But more than that, I hate being known as your wife.
Nancy continued talking through her tears. It wasn't just complaints about their marriage life, but about how he had trampled on the feelings of David and defended me.
You've tarnished the company that your brother carefully built up. And now you're firing someone who helped people. You're finished as a human being.
David was kind and valued others more than himself.
Yeah, divorce. I'm not generous enough to support someone who just complains. I have an investor willing to pay me $150 million, so I'm happy to give you a divorce.
Everyone at the venue must have thought, what a prideful person he was. And yet, Ben had said he would invest in the project, not in Ken as a person.
Ungrateful.
Ken took off his wedding ring and placed it on the table. Everything was a mess. Before I knew it, the topic of conversation had shifted to divorce, and I couldn't help but worry, what if Kate has complaints about me too? It puzzled me why Nancy chose such a large venue to bring up divorce, but then I thought maybe she feels so threatened at home that she could only say it here.
Try to change.
It's not me who needs to change. It's you guys who can't meet my expectations.
Nancy was at a loss for words. Of course, she was. Nobody wants to see their husband like this.
You want a divorce, right? Then don't say anything more to me.
I was dying to know why Nancy married Ken. I wanted to ask right away, but now was not the time.
If you keep this up, you'll end up alone.
Be quiet.
Suddenly, in a panic, Jesse rushed to Ken.
Sir,
Jesse handed Ken a smartphone.
it's a disaster. The $150 million deal just fell through.
What?
Ken took the phone, pressing it to his ear.
Hello, Ben. What's going on? Yes.
The room fell silent. Everyone strained their ears, curious about what Ben was saying, but couldn't make it out.
No, my earlier statement was to educate my employees. The planner, that was, Sherry's idea.
Ken, clearly flustered, tried to explain, but then collapsed to his knees as the call ended. Ben, who despises arrogance and dishonesty, might have taken offense to Ken's public disparagement, especially in front of a crowd. But I blamed myself for disappointing Ben, who had been willing to invest $150 million in my project. Yet, if I hadn't stood up for Nancy, then who knows what would have happened.
What now?
Ken sighed, almost laughing.
Hey, John.
He said in an uncharacteristically deep voice, sending shivers down my spine.
You've cost us $150 million. My wife wants a divorce, and look at the mood in this place. What are you going to do about it?
What do I do?
Firing you wouldn't be enough.
Suddenly, I desperately wanted to see my wife and daughter. I might lose everything today. All I could think about was not what to do with this venue, but how I would support my wife and daughter after quitting my job.
So, how are you going to take responsibility?
Am I supposed to pay the $150 million? No, I don't have that kind of money. Should I ask for the divorce to be called off? No, that would be unfair to Nancy. As my mind raced,
This was not my idea.
at the venue, Sherry's voice echoed. Everyone watched as Sherry stood with a microphone in hand. The media began taking photos and recording.
The creator of this project came up with it in just 3 days, while preparing for this party and handling his regular duties. I wasn't even aware that he was planning it, at Ken's request.
Surely she must be angry at me for moving forward with the plan without saying anything. Sherry didn't blame me harshly.
Honestly, I wished he had relied on me more. We're teammates, after all.
I felt terribly sorry to my team.
But the reason he could come up with such an exciting plan in just 3 days is because his mind is always filled with the desire to save children around the world.
I had forgotten in these past few days, caught up in preparing documents. Row Inc. is full of people with pure hearts and kindness.
Prioritizing helping people in town over such a pointless party seems like a no-brainer to me.
Do you want to be fired too?
Now, I'm worried that Sherry won't get fired by Ken. As if prepared for anything, Sherry pointed and glared at Ken.
If working under Ken means crushing someone's goodness, I'd rather quit. No one would want to follow a president like that.
Ken approached the stage, glass in hand, making noise with his steps. He had forgotten he was being filmed, his expression dominated by anger. I rushed to the stage to evacuate Sherry when,
Honestly, I couldn't care less about saving the children. Think about the company's profits.
Ken's voice echoed in the venue. These were the words Ken told me when I first made a presentation. I looked at the corner of the stage. There, Jesse was playing the recorder. The venue buzzed with the shocking content, uncharacteristic of the president of Row Inc. Thinking he couldn't cover it up, Ken stopped just before getting on the stage.
Jesse, what are you doing?
I can't stand it. The head of Row Inc. is constantly hurting people, only thinking of himself.
Using an investment of $150 million, a divorce announcement from his wife, and to top it off, his own heartless words echoing through the venue. The situation seemed so bad for Ken, it was almost pitiful.
Please apologize to everyone.
Me.
If you're the president, take responsibility for ruining this party.
I was surprised by how assertive Jesse was. But it was cool.
Do you enjoy making me the villain?
No, it's the other way around. I don't want you to become any more of a villain.
Ken stopped himself from saying something. The cold stares from everyone in the venue pierced through Ken. He apologized on the spot, his back hunched. The instability was astonishing. He still had some pride left, as he didn't verbally apologize clearly.
John, do you have anything you want to say to Ken?
Honestly, I was so caught up in understanding the situation, I couldn't think of anything to say. Given the mic by Sherry, I hesitated for a moment before speaking, then I said, I love this company, my colleagues who work with me and our clients who support us. Spending 3 nights straight on document preparation, my wife stayed up late to prepare snacks, and my daughter massaged my shoulders with her tiny hands. It made the tough work feel manageable. I became more appreciative of people. The desire to make someone happy seems to spread to those around you. Today, Sherry saved me when I was late. I looked at Sherry. Her expression, previously furrowed in anger, had softened. Ken, I'm truly sorry for ruining this important party, but as an employee of Row Inc., not helping those in need is not an option for me. I believe my daily actions are connected to my work. As I wondered what I want to tell Ken, my mouth seemed to move on its own. I haven't had a deep connection with Ken, having only presented a new project in these 3 days. Anyway, I want to stay at this company. Please revoke my dismissal. Ken, still with head down, didn't look up, engulfing the party in an awkward atmosphere.
No one needs to leave.
David, who was supposed to be in Africa, appeared with a sin-tanned face. His smile alone brightened the entire venue. Ken looked up, puzzled. I got a call from Jesse and man, was I surprised, laughed David as he approached Ken and sat down on the ground.
What are you doing?
What do you mean? Today is the president's inauguration party. Just as he said that, David grabbed Ken's arm, pulling him up energetically onto the stage.
What are you doing?
Ken looked over the venue. It must look different from when he was comfortably greeting everyone an hour ago.
I'm not fit to be president. I'm sorry.
Ken apologized to everyone in the venue again and left the stage. After that, the party came to an end. While cleaning up the venue, I was approached by David.
John, I am sorry.
I should be the one apologizing. It all happened because I was late. David gathered the employees who were cleaning up the venue.
Thank you, everyone. I think to myself, what a great company this is.
Everyone's faces softened at David's words. David has the power to make people smile with just a few words.
I'll review the system so everyone can work with peace of mind. Just give me some time.
I spoke to Nancy, who was about to get into a taxi. Nancy, why did you marry Ken? Nancy paused for a moment, then said with a shy smile,
Because he seemed strong.
I laughed at the surprisingly simple reason. Maybe I was overthinking it.
But that's no reason to get married. If you misunderstand what it means to be strong, it just becomes violence.
Maybe it's just not knowing how to protect oneself. My spontaneous remarks surprised Nancy. People who seem weak get protected by others, but those who appear strong are thought to be okay because they look tough. They're fighting alone. As I spoke, I couldn't help but imagine Ken's childhood. Someone capable of uttering such harsh words must have gone through something in the past. But that's no excuse to hurt others. Nancy held my hand and said, "Thank you." After cleaning up the party, I rushed home. The plan I worked hard on with the help of my wife and daughter fell through. Despite receiving many hugs from my daughter, the various things Ken said still stuck in me like thorns. Words can hurt people. Words can make people happy. Words can change lives. It was a day that made me strongly realize something I had taken for granted. A month later, I'm working lively every day as an employee of Row Inc. In the end, Ken left the company and divorced Nancy. The incident at the party spread through online news, and Ken's intentions were perceived negatively. Jesse, who had worked hard under David, became the president at the young age of 32. Despite various comments from clients and others, we, the employees, are satisfied with Jesse. President Ken, or Ken having lost his job and family, was wandering aimlessly. Feeling sorry for him, David suggested that he join him in volunteer work in Africa. To reach out to Ken, who had hurt his sister and many employees, showed how generous a person David is. I couldn't do something like that. Everyone thought Ken would definitely refuse, but surprisingly, he decided to go to Africa. When Ken visited the company after a long time, his expression was much more peaceful. It's hard to believe that someone who used to be so thorny could become so mellow. After apologizing to everyone, Ken left for Africa. Meanwhile, Sherry, inspired by meeting Nancy at the party, planned a project not for children, but aimed at helping women who struggle to live on their own.
Even men who disrespect women were born from a woman's body.
That's exactly right. And Sherry proposed to David to include Nancy in the project team and got the okay. Nancy used her experiences to speak at talk shows and to post on social media about ways to live happily despite illnesses. Nancy is now smiling at work. Living happily. That's enough. And then, Ben decided to fund the project I had planned. With the support of my wife, Kate, I'm working hard as the project leader. It's complicated to think that this project wouldn't have come about without Ken, but I thought I'd thank him the next time we meet. The few days after Ken became president felt like a long nightmare. At the same time, I was filled with gratitude for the many people who saved me from that nightmare. I wonder how many people I can make happy in my lifetime. How many people I can save from nightmares. Believing that my actions today will lead to the happiness of future children, I'll keep working hard today